let's add the liquid and start thinking from there, because now it's okay. This is what we have. We can add some light or small details, but without the liquid we are working without our product basically. So let's go here and make sure that we have the liquid. I prefer not to put an object and start lighting it. I prefer to put the actual liquid which we simulated, and we can do that by going to here, tool, scene, and we can just unhide the liquid. I'll go here, and for the liquid, this is the liquid. I can rename it to the middle liquid, and but for now let's just have it as it is. So we have the liquid. I didn't activate or unhide the bubbles, so we will see no bubbles. And in this frame, or in the early frames here, we have the liquid filling the bottle, so I prefer to go to later frame. And yeah, I forgot to deactivate the particle flow. That's why it's updating here, and it takes time to update. That's good, but I don't think we need it in this stage. So what I will do is that I will go to the particle flow here. For now I will deactivate it, and also for now I will go to the position object. I will remove the left and right ones because I don't want to create these bubbles without seeing the bottles. And I will do the same here for speed control. Already I'm just working on the middle one, so that's good. And for the position here also I don't need the left and right. Other than that, I don't think, yeah, left and right. So only the middle one is the one we care about here, and the one we work with. Nothing else is needed, but I deactivated this anyway, so when we are ready we just activate it. I'll bring this down, and now I can render. So I have the liquid and it's totally dark, except here when it's thin, and this is what we spoke about. Because of the fog we can just have this shown because it's thin. So it depends on how thick or thin is the fluid. We can see the details because of the light. So now let's do one thing. We can search for another frame to see how everything is looking. So let's go to the cola, actually, this one which we applied to this. Just, you can drag this and just throw it on the simulator. And let's bring this to 0.1 as example and see the difference. We can see that it's lighter and we can see some details inside the liquid, but I don't think this is what we want. We want it to be darker. Look here, we can see the back of the logo. Also, it's extremely important to understand that this doesn't really define the shape of the liquid because it's a lot of transparent. What defines the shape of the liquid is the bubbles inside. That's why we have to unhide the bubbles. And in this stage, I would say two things I want to do. First thing, I want to deactivate or hide this plan and this plan. Let's just call them something. I will call this plan, let's say left temp, because I want to adjust it later. And for this one the same, right temp. And let's hide both. And let's render this without the plans. Now we can see just only the bottle with the top light, which is extremely important to show the bubbles. Now I will unhide the bubbles by going to the shader. Just go BH. All the elements for the phonics, I will start from BH. So we'll go to the shader here and we will unhide it. So it's now here, as you can see, and we can start adjusting the parameters here whenever we want. I just give it some tint here, but we can change this later. It will automatically have some settings here. We will change. As example, let's go here to size distribution and zero out this one, because I don't want to change the distribution which I already had in my basic setup. This to override the things which we have in the setup, but to a certain degree. As example, we can reduce the size of the particles by going here and reducing the size, or we can just list the contribution of the diffuse or the light by reducing the diffuse multiplier. Also, automatically the simulator will add, the foam shader will add the simulator, which is this one, to make sure that the foam is taking consideration all the changes, like as example the displacement or the change in the topology of the surface of the water. This is extremely important when you do large scale water. Here it's just needed, just put it here. Also, we have a parameter here we'll discuss later, which is the cutter geometry. Again, there is a, I will name it a problem here in the Phoenix FD, which is still there. And basically, when the problem is that when you start rendering things and you have the foam particles, sometimes it doesn't render right, especially when there is interaction or collision. They are colliding with the edges of this geometry. Remember something, the particle can be on the surface of the water here or the surface of the liquid, but the bubble has a radius and it's big, so most of it or half of it will be inside the glass, and that will give us certain look which sometimes we don't like. So the solution is to cut these bubbles inside the glass and make sure that they are not inside the glass, and we can do that just by picking this and selecting the glass. So now we have it cut, but I will not activate it now. Let's work with it and see what we can modify later. So you can add motion blur, and you can define the kind of motion blur we will have here, of course. Else I would change this to 1.33, let's say 1.33, which is water, and maybe I'll increase this one, which is the highlight with like a glossiness and the highlight strength. You can just change these. The pressure variation is a factor which control the ability for the spheres, the small spheres or the bubbles, to intersect with each other. Anyway, we don't need to discuss it except if we will have some problem here to talk about. Bounce is how the light is bouncing. Now we choose here bubbles, and I think this is the most suitable one for our situation. And the color, I changed this because this is, you know, a tint of the cola. I don't want them to be white in this area. So let's render. Now we can see more details, and we can see actually the liquid, because the liquid itself, it doesn't show if we don't have something inside it to reflect or refract the details. Of course, the render here quality is low. I don't have much of samples or time to render this thing. I'm just doing some tests, and you can see that we have small problems here like this one. And in this situation here, in the beginning of the impact, the bubbles were big in this area, as you can see, and it's sticking out of the bottle. Now there's no solution for this one except if to do one thing. Even if we will cut it from the geometry, it will be above because the geometry is here. So the only solution is to consider that when we do the final simulation for the liquid inside, or to go here to size multiply and reduce it like 0.7 to make sure that this is smaller, but I don't prefer that. Maybe, of course, we can change this and reduce it, but that will reduce the overall size of all the particles. If I will render now, I will have less appearance for that one, but in general, all the bubbles are smaller. Now, of course, we can't see them. I can wait for the render to finish, and I will come back, or I will just increase the sampling a little. Let's just go to here, and I can just increase this into 2 minutes, and I will render. I'll come back after 2 minutes to show you the details. With this scale, we can see the bubbles here, and let's just detect small problems. There is a pattern here which is produced by the meshing, which we can fix a little. And here we have a good shape for the bubbles, and here also. Also, we have a problem here that the bubbles are like they don't refract right on the glass while we have them. So I don't think this is a big problem, but we can fix it. Usually it's advised or recommended by PhoenixFD is to go and here activate this one, glass material, and have or pick the geometry. And just to make sure the geometry has this thing which I activated already, which is the rendering. If you remember, we reduced the radio of the geometry. And just to remind you, if you look here inside, if I will deactivate this, it will be bigger. Now smaller, bigger, smaller. Means that I'm eating some of the liquid, because if we will go again to the simulator and go to rendering, and here we have the cutter activated. Let's deactivate the cutter and let's go to the shader, which is this one. And let's do one thing before we proceed and deactivate this one also, and see what kind of results we will have. Of course, again, all the settings I am having here just so rough, because I want to just render very fast, but eventually we will have some pictures to analyze and see. Now we have everything, but and I think this is like correct more, because we are not trimming the geometry of the mesh. Look here, it's exactly on the edge. If you will unhide this, we will see that we have the edges of the geometry exactly where it should be, and we have the bubbles to a certain degree filling this, but not totally. So the pattern is there and it's clear. The only reason I did this trick with the bottle, like cutting the liquid from the bottle, is to reduce this pattern, which will not look now clear, but in a later stage when everything is moving, you will see this pattern. And I can reference some video to show you that problem. If you remember this video which we had previously, we can see that we have certain pattern here which is seen because of the bubbles, and it's very clear, and we don't want that for sure in the final result. So my solution was usually to clean this is to add the geometry cutter, but the geometry cutter with the default setting, it's not working well. And so what I did is that I reduced the radio here, like contracted or made the geometry of the bottle smaller to eat more from the mesh, and that fixed the problem to a certain degree, but still it's addressed to PhoenixFD, and they are working on solving this problem. Now this is mainly again is caused because we see the bubbles moving here. If we don't see any bubbles, we will not see the problem with the liquid mesh. Even if we smooth it, do whatever we want, it's just gonna be seen because the bubbles are passing through this area, and they are basically on the surface of this water. So another solution is to enforce the bubbles to be generated inside a smaller container inside the liquid, and we can do that too. Let's just think how we can do it. So if you will go to the simulator here, and if you remember, we have here the foam. We can always generate the foam inside the simulator wherever it should be, but we also can do the birth inside the volume, which is basically the bottle or a smaller version of this bottle. Means that we will have the liquid, but the foam will not be created on the edges here, it will be created inside, and we'll make sure that all the bubbles are inside this container. At least actual geometry we'll use here is smaller than this geometry, or is contracted more, or just inside more, with 1/2 of the size of one bubble, like 1 centimeter. That will make sure that even if the particle is created on the edge here, it has half of its radio and it's still inside the liquid. This is another technique which we can use, but for now I don't think we need to go that much. I'm just mentioning all the ideas which we can do to make sure that we have something controllable more. Now, other problem is that we have this. We mentioned about this. Let's go and activate in the shader. Let's activate this one, which is the cutter geometry. Of course, you need to activate invert, because if you don't activate invert, it will consider that the geometry is the outside of this geometry. Remember, this has an edge and a volume, the bottle. So let's just activate this one and render and see the results. Of course, I can duplicate this thing to compare between the two results. Now we can see that all the foam objects and bubbles here are deleted inside the edges of this bottle, including everywhere here. Of course, you will see it here because it's refractive through the liquid, but in general it's deleted here, and we don't want to have that for sure. But this is an additional control which we can use if we need, and I like having that here. We will not use it for sure because we need to have the bubbles just here. We need to have the bubbles here, but now again it's not completely filling the thing here, and the problem is that because it's atmospheric, it's not a geometry, the renderer doesn't understand how to deal with it in the glass. So the solution suggested by guys in Phoenix FD is to, let's deactivate this one and go down here, is to activate this one, which is a glass geometry. Defining the glass geometry will allow the Phoenix FD or the bubbles to understand that this is glass. So let's render this again and see what would be the result. Now there is another problem gonna arise here, and if you will notice it now, sometimes it appears, sometimes it doesn't, but in general it's black spots, and it's there. Even if you can see it, it's there, because as you can see it's not completely as clear as it was. These are the black spots. It's advised by Phoenix FD also to remove these to reduce the radius of the bottle, but we already did that when we went here and activated this one, when we reduced the edge of this bottle. Again, just to show you this in details, if we will go here, on and off. So on, it's there, and off, it's bigger. So I will leave it on. Already we did what they suggested and it's not totally working. And again, after the discussion with the guys, they are fixing this now. So I don't think it makes really big problem in our scene or the shape of our scene. I think we can manage without this problem or without doing anything. And we will not see the pattern because we reduce the radius of this thing, so we are eating more of the liquid. The only advice I think in this situation we can do, or we can work with, is to generate all the foam in a smaller volume here. But that's it. So if I go here again to make sure that I have the final result I'm expecting, just make sure that we deactivated this one. Yeah, it's deactivated. Yeah, so this is it, and I can just start showing all the deflectors again, and maybe I will tweak them a little, then come back to add additional lights. What else we need to do? I just introduced these two instead of the small boxes we have. The same basically, but change the position, and they are doing good. So if I will render now with these images or with these two geometries, I have the reflection in both sides, which is very nice and smooth here. We can wait a little to see all the details here for the bubbles. but I don't think we need to go that far. Anyway, because we have the light above, we have all this amazing and beautiful subsurface scattering for the light here for the geometry because of the fog material, as well as we can add more to that by going here to the material, and you can always run the translucency. I would say we can add that water soft one and just control this number to have something which kills the blackness inside it, but I don't think that's necessary. It will increase the render time anyway. So for now I have these deflectors, and I need, if I will go here, I need to start working on the middle here because we can't see the details here, and I need to have the light here. If you remember the reference, at least we have something in the back. To do that, we can add two things. The first one is to light the glass, and the second one is to light the geometry inside the glass. How we can do these two things? The idea here is to add a light and another plane, and I don't want to use the area light. I will use a cheaper light, which is basically the direct light. So I have a light here which I bought. It's easy to put light. Let's see. Yes, if I go up a little, I have, actually I don't have it. Let's just create it. So by going here to light, I will go to normal light like standard, and I will pick up the target light. The idea is to have it coming from back here. Maybe we can just activate only light so we can pick up the light and change its position. I want it to be behind it exactly. Of course, later it will be lighting the other two bottles, so we make sure that it includes it. And now let's change some settings there, including the position of the light. I think that's a good position. All we need to do is to put this above a little, and it change how it fades around. So we can do that from the modify panel. First thing, for the intensity, I would say 10 is good as a start. Activate the V-ray shadow, and for here I need to activate the decay because I want it to fade slowly. Of course, during the testing we don't need to do that, but I think we are trying to establish the final look. So it's time. Now it's small, as you can see, and I can activate one of these two. I don't want to have it with cone or overshoot, but I can increase this to make sure that I have, let's just convert it into rectangle first, and I can increase this to something like 20 or 19, and also I can increase this to 25, something like that. Yeah, just this area, and I can change this number down to make sure that I'm including all this area. Of course, we can modify it after we render, but this is it. Let's render and see what we have. Yeah, I will include all the lights in the scene. As you can see, we have now really good backlighting, but again, I don't want it to be everywhere here. I really want it just to be in this area. So because it's limited as we did here, all I need to do is to move the target down a little, maybe like this. So here less light in the middle, and maybe I can bring it down. Light now. I have this dark area here. Where's the logo? Of course I need to establish a light for the logo, but I exactly have what I wanted in my mind. Again, I can go to target and make sure it's down a little. Now we can see all the energy here and we have good distribution. Of course, I can add the light here in the middle, but I don't want that. I want the logo to be the only white thing here, and we will see the bubbles coming up. But for now, this is what we want. And let's establish one light, additional light to light the logo. We'll face that, and I'm sure you know that for the client, the logo is the most important thing. And we can do that by going here again and one light, direct light, the cheapest. For this one, we need to have it a little above, so I will select this, go above here in this area. For the intensity, I don't think we need much. Let's say 5 or 6. I can activate this one, and we need to have decay, as well as let's change these. I will have it overshoot. Let's reduce this, reduce it a little because I want it to be around the logo, as you can see here, something like a little bigger than the logo itself. 13 and a half, something like, yeah, a little less than this. Yeah, so this is it. And of course I don't need to add some specularity or something, so I can control that here. Only diffuse. I don't want this to cause any specularity, additional specularity, more than what I have already from all the deflectors around. Let's do that. Let's render this. For this, I don't want this one to affect everything. I can do one small trick, which is excluding everything except the element I want to light. The intensity is a little more than what we want, so I can just, because I have a decay, I can just put it far away like this, and I don't need to include the liquid, so the only thing I need is to include only the bottles. Let's see the middle one, which I am working on now. This is it. Include, and let's just try render now. Now I have it exactly as I want. Only this one have lights, no specularity or something, and everything else is as it was. If we will wait a little, we will start seeing the bubbles, because now I can't see them much. So now the render is almost done. I had to pause the video to see. It's just 2 minutes. Of course, when we increase these things, we can address the problem here with these, how much they have light. We can address this problem and we can fix it through the shader. Of course, let's activate this and fix it through the shader, because we can modify this diffuse. Like if we say 0.9, it will make sure that we have less light on these. Also, we can exclude them sometimes from certain lights, but for now I see that here the sense is so good. Most of these gray areas you see here, it's bubbles, but it will not appear with this resolution. It will appear when we have full HD and we have all the details, as we will see later. But now I have all the things I want from this. Remember, this is the bubble which is big, and when we resimulate everything later, we make sure that we don't have bigger bubbles like this. But again, this frame is at the beginning, and we will see that we have problems in the beginning. Let's just do one last thing before we continue. As I mentioned before, we can put some blend behind this button, and so it will light the glass, because there are two elements again. There's the glass and there is the liquid. So I prepared one. Let me just bring it. Its name is blend back, and I think here it is. This is one. This is the one. And this is just very simple geometry, which has already the same kind of softbox. 6 for here. Also, I just remember that I have to activate this and this, a direct light, direct illumination. And let's do one thing also. I will deactivate this light to see what is the situation now before we add the backlight. So we have this now, and as you can see, we have some, it looks like we see the plane from back. Before that it was totally black. So again, let me show you without this, without it, it's render. We have black mostly, and when we add this plan, and we can just from material increase this into like 25 and see how that will affect the whole thing. We can see that we have some details here even before we put the backlight, and I like to have this like this here for the 3 bottles, because later even for the ice cubes and everything, and because of the staging, we will see it will be like a light which is coming from the background. Again, one thing here is that also I did one change, is that if we will go here to this object and right mouse button and choose the V-Ray properties from here, reflection and refraction, it doesn't have anything, but if you will go here to this plan, which is the ground plan, and look here, we will see that we excluded this from the plane back because it will cast some light here and we don't need to see that light on the ground. From here and from here, we don't need to do that for the refraction, but anyway, we have it. So now with the light, this light on and everything, I think we came to the final stages of having everything with light. So if I will render just one frame, I see that it's showing all the things I need to see. The only thing I think we have, this light is coming from the plan, and I kinda like it. We can extend that for sure by going to the plan itself and just make it down or bigger. But anyway, the background we can render this on alpha and add the background later, but I prefer to do things in 3D and then I can exclude or include whatever I want because I can create the masks I want here. So what I did is that I created big plan back. So if you will create one, which is, I will look from front view, and here I can do one big enough and have it back. So because it's here, I think we have to increase the height and make sure that you include that in the camera's movement because it will show always. And for this one, I don't need it to be really casting or receiving shadow, neither to reflect or refract anything, just I want it to be visible to the camera. This is the deep background. This is the original one I said I have. So I will delete this one I created, and this is it, just another plan. And for the spotlight, this is a spotlight at the back. I'm just trying to speed up things. This is a spotlight, nothing else. And this spotlight is having intensity of 75, and it's just including, the only thing include is this one. I don't want it to contribute to anything else. Its cone means that it doesn't light all the area, just this spot, because I want to cast some light here in the background, like I mentioned before, like the light is coming from underground. So let's try to render this and see what we will have. This is what we have now, and if we will wait a little, we will have all the details and the foam inside this bottle, and I think this is what we are seeking. Now the magic happens when we unhide the other elements, like the drops of water on the bottle, like the liquid splash, and like the cubes, the ice cubes. So let's do that. And I think we don't need to change anything because the setup is made to have everything right. So it's automatically gonna light everything right. And that's amazing. I will save everything just to make sure I don't lose my information. It's very stable, phonics and V-Ray and everything here, as well as TY Flow, although it's just a beta version, but it's really stable. Let's do that. Let's unhide the liquid by going to the Scene Explorer and see the liquid. So I will write pH. I'll change the names after all when you receive the file, but this is the liquid. And in here we can find that we have a good frame to work with. I can render this frame. So let's add the material for the liquid or the water. The material again is black here, white here, white here, and for the water we need 1.33, as well as I will add 12 here at least, and 12. It works with this number, but and deflect on the other side, and that's the material I can apply here. You can see it here. So now let's render. Already I have the material applied. Let's render this. Again, we are really speeding up everything and we're lighting everything like very fast, but usually it takes time to have all these details. As you can see, the first thing you will see that the light here at the background is affecting all the water in the background, which is nice because it actually shows that there is light back. And we have both lights. We have the actual direct light in the background, and we have the plane, which is the backlight. But we also can do one thing. If we don't want this to affect the drops that much, we can exclude them from this light by going to exclude and adding the liquid. I don't want to include that in the light, but I don't prefer that. Finally, we need that light to cast its contribution to the thing, and as you can see, it doesn't really affect that much because it's just directed toward. Sorry, I didn't even have it on for some reason. I noticed that here because it's just, as you remember, it is the one who's responsible about lighting this. I just push it a little far, but this is it. And I can go to another frame like here as example, which all the explosion is happening, or even earlier frame. I try to work with very simple computer just to make sure that you can, or you understand that this is something you can do on your computer at home, and it's really easy to manage. Nothing fancy, nothing difficult, nothing impossible. The details here are amazing because there is a ripple here, and of course you can see the edges of the simulator here, or the simulation container, which we can extend here and make sure that the plan, which is the ground plan, is extended also, because we don't want one to be bigger than the other one. But that's it, it's going. I can just wait until it's finished and I come back. Actually, let's leave that to the final render. I don't need to wait much here. Let's just see other elements, because we will see all things in very high resolution and in details. But let's see other elements. If I go here again and have the ty flow. I will unhide the cache, and for these cubes the material can be really easy also. It's a water based, so I will do this, but I will leave just a little gray here because I want it to be a little different. So I'll just have this here, white here, white here, and I need to reduce this to 0.9 as well as maybe this, just to have something which is a little blurry. Can reduce this here a little so it's not totally black, and for this it's 1 point, I would say 4 or 5, something like that. So I already prepared the material in this. I have it on the cache, so let me just go to here. Yeah, it's already applied. So let's render this without a liquid. I don't want to consume the time with the liquid. We can see that this is good. This is the thing we wanted, and else I think we are good. The only thing which I can also check is the drops, the water drops. Let's hide this thing and let's go to maybe here, a frame which after this frame, and let's activate the drops, and we can do that here by going to this, which is gonna take time to update, and to this one. And the only thing I did is that I changed the number to 4000s, not just 2000s, because I feel we have to add more. So let's render this, and the material is simply another material one. I can just apply this one, or sometimes you have to change the index of refraction to 1.2 or something if you see that it's just different. It's applying, it's not clear or it's not shown as we want, or shown more than we want. When you reduce this thing, so basically it's shown less. If you increase this thing, there's more refraction and it will be shown more. So that's it for the bubbles, and you can apply this to the measure actually. So it doesn't matter if we have the particles here, we need to make sure that we have the measures. So let's say mesh, we have the two meshes and they are in the scene, so we apply this material to it. Already I applied that material, and let's render. We can see the drops now. It will take a little time until it just all things are. Now this light is so strong. If you remember, we had the back plan here with 25. I think we have to reduce it because I don't want it to be that strong. But here are the drops, and some of them is sliding like this one. Let's just wait a little, and this one. But yeah, we have everything we need. I think this is like, and here's the liquid jumping because this is what the liquid does. And for the foam is also in the scene. Final render I would recommend with, I will go to the bases, and I will show you very fast, simple compositing without considering all the bases, just only the depth of field. Maybe we'll add that one, and that's it. Simply look at the bubbles now inside and see the drops outside. Very nice combination. The extra light here is coming from the plane which we have to change, but that's it. So the only change here I can do is to go to this plan and make sure that the material we have on this plan, which is this one, is 6, not 25, because it looks like really intensive. So what I will do now is that I will unhide all the elements I expect to see in the final render, like this one, and as well the cubes. Very manageable scene, not much of resources consumption, and we are not consuming our resources. And in the final render, I don't think we need to do a lot of steps. I absolutely don't use the denoiser in this situation, because with such details I have one of two: to increase the sampling so much so I can see the details. If I will add the denoiser to reduce the flickering, most of the details, especially in the small bubbles, gonna go and will disappear. I don't need to do that. I prefer to increase the sampling and have everything right. So if I will see something which is acceptable, if you will go to the progressive rendering, even don't need to do the full bucket rendering, and you can just increase to 10 minutes for the frame HD, full HD resolution, and you will have something decent. But again, that's not a production quality. A production quality, you should have good amount of samples, as we will see how we can set up something very rough for that. But now we have all this, and let me just stop the video until it's just only this frame complete, and come back. And that's it. And I think we have a lot of details here to see, and the water is really amazing and stable, if you will see in the final result I will show you. But it's epic, and all you need to do is to prepare for the final simulation, and that's it. Let's just prepare for that.